Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. This is Theo, your host for the episode. Joining us today is Elizabeth Osborne, COO at the Great Lakes Credit Union, and a wonderful person we were just chatting right before recording that I happened to just run into on LinkedIn. So thank you, LinkedIn God, for connecting us, and welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
This is going to be amazing because you and I have talked a few times before, and I'm a fangirl, so I've seen some of your posts on social as well, and I love everything you talk about, and I think it will greatly resonate with a lot of people who are tuning in on the show. So let's first start with how I found you. And it was from when you were actually in town testifying before the House Financial Services Committee. I know I'm not the only one who found you there, but it was just amazing. Like you were there and you were talking about the use of AI in financial institutions. First of all, I love a female voice that is articulate and that's out there and talking about technology in our industry. So I do want to start with this because AI is everywhere. That's all we talk about these days, it seems like. But one of the challenges you did talk about is regulations and specifically lack of clarity from a regulatory perspective. So tell us a little bit more. What do we need to do? What are we missing? And how can we get better?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a topic that I've been a part of since earlier this year. So I was very fortunate to be invited to a roundtable that was hosted by Kyle Hotman, so vice chairman of the NCUA. He is brilliant and such a pleasure to speak with, and he's very focused on ensuring that our industry continues to move forward. And so the purpose of this roundtable was to talk about AI. So there was a handful of credit unions and a whole bunch of fintech leaders. And it was a very big roundtable. And so we had just 2 hours of riveting discussion about what either the fintechs offer for the credit unions, what our use has been. But a lot of the discussion was focused on hesitation and hesitation to introduce AI in our industry because of lack of clarity on regulation. So the story I shared, because I talked about Olive. So Olive is she's our virtual AI conversational agent that we introduced through Interface AI. And we introduced Olive last year, actually just over a year ago. And our contract review for that particular engagement what took forever. It was extremely lengthy. And it's because our lawyers were concerned of the what if. What if our regulators introduce changes that would prohibit use of this type of AI, this particular use case, or this partner, whatever the case, right? It was so unknown. And so we spent tons of time and money and effort to build language to protect GLCU in the event that occurred, right? So exit language, things like that. So that was a good example that I shared with the roundtable that I attended, in which because of that lack of clarity, we just had to spend a lot of time. And frankly, if our lawyers had a choice, we would not have introduced Olive. But I was like, no, this is very, very focused on it. We knew it was part of our strategy here at GLC and we had to do it. And so this has then evolved since then into like you heard during the recent testimony I provided to Congress was that hey, we just need some clarity, right? And just like a statement that shows or that confirms our belief that AI is a technology and our existing regulations already cover it, right? It's a third party provider. We are pretty heavily regulated already. So if you just pull that in, maybe in the form of a memo or a statement, much like the NCUA has given in the past, that I think would put a lot of credit union leaders' minds at ease and help us to make better decisions on using technology that clearly is a game changer for the industry, of every industry.
What strikes me, and perhaps I shouldn't, is that AI has, as a technology, as you say, has been around for so long, right?
So long.
This is not new. We've used it in credit decisioning, we've used it in back office automation, we've used it in so many places, and yet here we are, 2024. Um, I can't imagine how frustrating it is, because you could clearly see the benefits, you could see the pathway, and kudos to you for insisting on the journey, because I would imagine some other folks would have been like, all right, let's hold off and see what others are doing, which,
Yes.
in itself, I think it's a valid option as well. It's just, depends on where you want to go. So let's take one more step towards that journey that you took. You mentioned with Interface AI, with Olive. I love the name. What were some of the challenges in addition to regulatory perspective you were talking about that you wish you knew? And what are some of the things that organizations need to keep in mind when it comes to partnering with AI startups or broadly fintechs?
Yeah. So a couple of the challenges we experienced was that, especially in the credit union industry, and I should specify for financial institutions our size, right? Because there is a big difference between Navy Fed and Great Lakes Credit Union, right? They service so many more members. They have a much larger budget. So institutions like Navy Fed, like the Big Ten on the banking side, right? They can develop their own AI and they have a lot more control over it, where we are very dependent on third parties. So our third party that we selected, Interface AI, fortunately, our due diligence proved to be very successful and worthwhile because there was quite a few players out there that we were comparing them against, but it wasn't highly adopted yet in our industry. So I found references, but there weren't as many as I thought there'd be because, like you mentioned, AI's been around for so long, but it's hadn't been introduced at or adopted at really for this particular use case as much as it should have been. And so that was really kind of that challenge. But we found our due diligence was so important because it helped us understand one, what we shouldn't do, which is overcomplicate it, right? Really I'm like, just keep it simple. Let's leverage what's almost like out of the box, right? What they offer with our current core provider in forms of different topics of support. And let's introduce it that way, see how it goes, revise it, monitor it, et cetera, and then continue to broaden it and refine it to meet our needs. Other institutions I found that had introduced it, but had had much lower results than we had in terms of adoption was because they overcomplicated it. So honestly, best advice for anyone, keep it easy, keep it simple, figure out what your best use case is, start there, start small, add in your guardrails, add in controls, and then continue to kind of grow as the technology grows and develops. Because a year ago versus now, totally different in terms of the types of AI solutions out there and the partners that are available, and also our members' openness to using something like that.
I I like your advice. Start simple. I think that is such a golden rule
Yeah.
that we just tend to forget, because it's like, it's like, oh, this is so cool. What if we do this? What if we do this? Next thing you know, you add like 30 layers of additional requirements and dependencies that probably shouldn't have been there to begin with, at least not in the start. So keep in mind, yes, I love that. Keep it simple. So let's switch gear a little bit. There's another topic that, well, has been talked about for quite a while. It's a good and bad situation. So we've been living longer. That's not new. I think we all realize that. But with living longer means that we have more generations of people living and working alongside each other. I remember last year when I turned 50, my kids were like, "Oh, you're half a century old." I'm like,
Oh,
"Okay, here you go. You have another 50 years. You're going to be stuck with me." But then you start doing the calculation, like, oh, wait a minute, how many generations of us going to be together, right? And if you think of financial services as an industry, it doesn't matter how what generation you are, right? You can be silent generation, boomer, uh, Gen X, Gen Z, Alpha, what have you. By the way, I really don't like those delineation, but regardless, we still need banking services. So how can we evolve, or can we get to a point where we can actually cater to the needs of such a big, wide, diverse demographic of people? Because we all want something different. We all use services differently. Can we actually get there?
I love this question because it's kind of like I feel as if this question, whoever figures it out has the keys to the kingdom of success. And I would love to be that company, that organization, or this industry that does it. Because it is. I don't know if we've ever had such a broad span of generations that are using products. So how do you meet all those needs? So I'll take it back to specific to Great Lakes Credit Union. We're a low income designated, HUD certified financial cooperative. We have a very fantastic, very meaningful story to tell. But when you look at the demographics of those that bank with us, we do a pretty good job with the older generations than with the younger generations. We're just not attracting the younger generations. And so when we think about our strategy for our institution and how we are not going, or how we'll still be here in 10 years, because eventually that older demographic will age out, right? They're going to age out of our product offerings. How do we, one, prepare for the transfer of wealth? That's a big, big factor that's coming up fast. It's already happening. And then two, how do we really get to a point where the younger demographics want to bank with us? And that's one piece that we're trying a few different ways. One is we offer a variety of different channels to meet all those needs. It's really hard to meet everyone's needs, but if you have, let's say, Olive as one channel, right? Certain demographics are much more open to having a conversation with a bot than others. Then you have in branch transactions, right? And having that conversation, which we found kind of caters towards one generation. Your digital app, right? Your mobile app, that's important. That's right now, we all know that's the future, and you got to keep that focus because that will eventually be the driver of many transactions. So it is tough. And so it's something we have very top of mind. One thing that we've done is we introduced MLG. MLG is a platform where we capture feedback from our members quickly. It's like a quick survey that they get after they experience some kind of event. Let's say they visit a branch or they open a new account through our online account opening platform. Soon it'll be after they have a conversation with Olive, right? A variety of different factors. So we have a quick 3 to 5 question survey that they get, and we get that feedback. And that feedback is instant. And then we share it with department heads and use that data and that information to help drive our strategy. So if we start hearing, let's say, for example, we had a lot of members that were like, your ATMs, I can't make a deposit. This is terrible. And we're complaint after complaints. So this year we replaced our ATMs with brand new fleet and introduced ATM as a service. And so now they're using that, and that's a 24/7 accessible device for our members to use. So that's one instance where we're trying just through feedback. I don't know if it's demographic, but I do see value in listening to your members, whether they're current members or potential members. So anything you can do to get that information and apply it to your strategy is really going to help you as you continue forward. But we've got to keep an open mind.
Ooh, that's a tough one. And you're right, value in listening. I think as a society, I feel like we put a lot of focus on people who talk a lot, and we don't appreciate people who listen. So value in listening is a huge one. It is a forever interesting topic because that's how I started, is looking at different generations and looking at the needs of different generations, and it has evolved so much to the point where sometimes I feel like generations is not really the best way of describing where we are on the journey, because there are different people, it depends on where they are. You can be having a small business as an owner. You can be fresh out of college. You can be, going back home, studying again for your new degree. You can be doing a variety of things, and depends on what you're doing. You'll be needing something different. So it is definitely a interesting question to tackle, probably for the next 5 to 10 years. So, and in relation to that, I know that we share quite a large mutual group of friends, and quite a lot of them have been talking about a branchless future or a cashless future. I had a glimpse at the cashless future a few times. I have to say, I'm not a big fan. It is interesting, but there are so many instances where I'm like, oh, I need money and I can't get it to work. I think there's merit in both, especially as we're talking about servicing different people from different backgrounds. There are things that I think we still need to see face to face. A lot of times I'm like, all right, I just want to do my own thing when I have time, which is, not banker's hours. Curious to hear from your perspective, um, where does the future go? Do you think we'll be at a point where we will start repurposing branches? We'll be closing branches. I know there are some banks that are opening branches. It seems like we're all over the place.
Yeah, it is totally all over the place. And some of the decisions that banks and credit unions have made, I'm like, scratch my head, like, why would they close that? That's in a great market. Or why would you open a branch there? Because you're not going to own market share or whatever the case. And so I I thought a lot about this question, and I do think it all goes back to the mission and the values of the credit union specific, because in our industry, in the credit union industry, we're all very different. Some are community based, some are seg based. For us, while we have introduced a cashless branch, we did that actually in 2022, and it's been very successful. It was in a market, it made sense, right? We have members that go in there. We have bankers or member specialists that help to guide our members through using a full service ATM, and they can have a conversation with them. But that was very specific to that market. On the flip side, branches, we continue to open branches to meet members' needs. So this year in particular, we opened a branch in the Austin neighborhood. It's on the west side of Chicago. The Austin neighborhood represented a financial desert, so banking desert, food desert, healthcare desert. So the tens of thousands of people that live there were having to go to other neighborhoods outside to do grocery shopping, to meet their banking needs. And so we're so fortunate to be selected to partner with the Leaders Network. The Leaders Network is a group of community and religious leaders in different neighborhoods of Chicago that recognize there is a need to bring businesses back to help improve the neighborhood, right? Bring it back to meet those needs, to help to improve financial stability for individuals. And so we opened a branch in that neighborhood to meet that need. So sometimes there is a need for that, right? If there's no other banks, there's no other ways to conduct your financial business, opening a branch gives you that opportunity. And so that was something I'm really proud of. And we'll continue to do that for neighborhoods like it, because that is what our communities need to thrive. That goes back to our values and our mission as a credit union. In addition, like I mentioned earlier, we're HUD certified. So our housing counselors, they will meet with members and non-members virtually, but they also sit in a branch. So they can meet with members of the community in person, which, if you think about, if you're developing a financial plan to get out of debt, to do something that tends to be very personal, right? It can be very scary. And so our housing counselors are able to meet with individuals in the community and have that discussion in person, it's a fabulous program. It's government funded. We are doing what we should be doing as credit unions by introducing that, but you got to have a branch to do it. So goes back to, that's part of our mission. Others, you've seen great success, like the Alliance are fully digital. They've done very well. So there, we can't forget the digital side because you need that. It goes back to the generational discussion, right? Different generations, they're going to need different channels. And you will, I do think you'll continue to see a shift more towards digital platforms, more self-service platforms, and away from branch transactions. But I do think there will always be a need for physical brick and mortar locations. We just are going to have to, over time, right size, in my opinion.
Can we clone you?
Oh,
I I wish we have more people that can understand the nuance of what you just talked about, because it's so easy, right, for a lot of us from various places where we are and look at this like, oh, this is so silly. Fundamentals doesn't work. Numbers don't work. You know, why would you put a branch there? It's real estate. It's da, 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 da. You keep hearing everything, but it's all numbers. It all became transactions, if you will, right? And human lives, communities is not just about data point and transaction. There are human stories behind each one of those. As you say, you know, putting someone in a neighborhood talking about housing discussions, those are very personal things. It's good to have it. A bank in a neighborhood, in a community, is more than just where you conduct finances. It creates a whole flywheel of things that will happen to it, just like schools. Public schools is not just a school. That's where people go to. That's where people meet from different walks of life. That's where we learn to be responsible citizens of the community. So I love what you just said, and appreciate you sharing with us. So this is interesting. You lead right into the last thing I want to ask you before we close. I think as an industry, I often ask this: are we doing enough for our communities as a whole? I often go back to why does financial services exist to begin with? Why does fintech exist to begin with? What are we trying to do? What's our mission, to your point? And more should we be doing or thinking about that we're not thinking enough about? What can you leave us with that we'll take back and say, okay, all right, this is homework from Elizabeth that we need to work on?
I think I would also would love ideas on this. So if anyone's willing to share, please reach out. Because I think the financial empowerment tied to financial education is a big key, along with, you know, the name credit union. I really wish it was a different name because it implies you need credit and it implies you need to be part of a union. And so people who, like myself, I came from banking prior to this, and I kind of thought it was something I couldn't be a member of. I didn't qualify to be a member of. So we've got to figure out how to get past that. It's truly member-owned banking. So if we can tie in kind of like, it's almost like rebranding our industry without officially renaming it, by also tying in how we align to meet the community needs, right? To improve financial success and empower members of communities to make better decisions, to buy homes, right? To make safer neighborhoods for them to live in. I loved your tie into communities and schools because that's it. My kids go to Chicago Public Schools, one of the largest school districts. Okay. It's a big school district. I'm very fortunate to live in a neighborhood with a school that performs much higher because the community rallies around it. So how can we find that, do that, and align it with credit unions and the movement that we have, which is so powerful? It goes back to values and mission by empowering our communities so they believe in it and then partner with that community to build better environments, build better neighborhoods for our children and for the future.
Pin drop moment. And there you have it. Let's think about the needs of people, think about the needs of community, empower and lift each other up that is the food for thought for today. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your time as always, and we will continue to rally behind you. And we're there. Let's go. So thank you and appreciate it. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. We'll talk to you all next week.
Thank you.